Hey guys, how's it going? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 16 things that you absolutely have to know about before you go to the Canton Fair. If you're not aware, the Canton Fair is probably the largest supplier fair in the world. It's located in Guangzhou, China, and it's just got a ton, like literally hundreds and hundreds, thousands of suppliers there available for you to find and source products that you'd be potentially looking for to sell on Amazon FBA or your e-commerce store. Of course, there's many other buyers there, everything from retail stores to online, wholesalers, distributors, and everybody in between. It's a massive fair. I've been there a couple of times. I've had great experiences going there. So I thought that I'd essentially make a video here just kind of detailing to you the top 16 things that you absolutely have to know. As you can see back here on the board, this is what I'm going to be reviewing today. So we got a lot to cover. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of today's video, so I encourage you to stick around to the end. If you guys don't know, my name's Lamar and I'm a 7-figure Amazon FBA seller. I've been selling private label products on Amazon since 2015. And I get a lot of questions from my students in my mastermind group just about going to the Canton Fair. Should you go to the Canton Fair? What's involved with going to the Canton Fair? It's a huge trip. There's a lot involved, and is it worth it in the first place? Well, I've had a lot of great experiences with going to the Canton Fair. It's a great way to meet face-to-face with your current factories or your current suppliers that you're already doing business with. And it's a great, opportunity to just find literally hundreds of thousands of new product ideas. It also allows you to do a faster feedback loop. So instead of having to deal with factories through text messaging or email communication and potentially miscommunication, like errors just from dealing back and forth with them, you can go directly there. You can meet with them face to face. Presents an opportunity just to build that deeper relationship with your factory because you're actually there in the first place, and allows you to communicate just a little bit easier. But before we jump into the 16 tips of things that you absolutely have to know about the Canton Fair, I did want to make sure that you click that subscribe button below, you turn on the notification bell so you get notified of when I release videos about Amazon FBA and the surrounding strategies that I see working out there in the industry, trying to help you guys be super successful on Amazon. And of course, like always, if you've got comments about the video, please drop them below, and definitely give me a thumbs up on the video if you've learned something new, if I brought something to your attention about the Canton Fair. The first thing I want to start off with is when to go. So the Canton Fair is held during the spring and the fall of every single year. And then during that time period, there's 3 phases, and each phase has a different, basically, industry there. There's hundreds of thousands of suppliers across all of the different phases. So you have to plan accordingly. You want to make sure that you're checking the website and figuring out what phase that you want to be at for the particular product that you're looking at, sourcing or finding a factory for. Within each phase, there's then 3 massive buildings, and each of those buildings have different zones. When I've gone to the Canton Fair, I've only really gone to phase 2 and phase 3. And then within each of those phases, they have zones. And these zones are massive. Like, it's hard to conceptualize just how big these buildings are. But my sister and I, when we went, we literally had to run the entire time, basically. I mean, we were like speed walking through these 3 enormous buildings, and we barely got to see everything. So the first thing here is you want to make sure that you know when to go and that you're going to the correct zones so that you can essentially see everything that you want to see. You want to kind of have a plan before you go so that you can really get the most out of it. In addition to that, as I said, there's a springtime and a fall time. I've only been during the fall, and every single year, I do see the same factories year after year. Now, I haven't been to the springtime, but I've heard that there's sometimes some different factories there. Some factories go in the spring, sometimes other factories go in the fall. So maybe the next time I go to the Canton Fair, I'll be looking to go in the spring and just check out kind of are there different factories between the spring and the fall. If you've been there during the spring and the fall, what's your experience with seeing different factories? Getting a badge. So getting a badge, you have to apply for directly on the Canton Fair website before you go. Now, it's a complicated website, actually. It's very poorly designed user interface. You know, if you're struggling figuring out how to apply and like there's different buttons and weird application questions, just know that that's normal. It's just part of the weird website. The positive is once you apply and are approved for a badge, once you have your badge, you can essentially reuse that badge every single year from then on. So it's important to kind of stumble through and kind of work through the application process. But once you do have the badge, you're set to go for the next several years at least. Now let's talk about a visa. So you're either going to need a business visa or a tourist visa. After you apply and you get accepted by the Canton Fair for your buyer's badge, they actually, I believe, will provide you a referral letter. You need some sort of a letter to obtain a business visa, basically saying that you have permission to visit or go to the fair, so then they will provide you the letter that then you can get your Chinese visa. However, in my experience, that's just a little cumbersome to do so. And you can also just apply for a tourist visa directly with the Chinese embassy and go then to the Canton Fair. And I haven't had any trouble with doing that. And quite frankly, we are tourists. We just happen to also be going to the Canton Fair at the same time. And that application process of applying for a tourist visa is just much easier to do so versus going through kind of the paperwork on getting a business visa. However, you're going to need one of them, and I know that you can attend the fair with either one of them, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's just up to you and which one you decide to choose. Now let's talk about technology. So the first thing that we should mention here is a phone, a SIM card. How are you going to, maybe use Google Maps or just get around China, being in China and using your phone? I would probably recommend, especially if this is your first time going to China, is just paying for your international data plan on your current cellular plan. I believe Verizon has $10 a day, and you can use that at least for the first couple of days until you get to the Canton Fair, maybe, until you get familiar with China. $10 a day for that convenience of especially the first couple days is worth it, in my opinion. Now, of course, you can get to the airport, whether that's landing directly in Guangzhou Airport or Hong Kong or Shenzhen, and you can buy a SIM card there with access to use your phone, within China. However, it's just going to be a little bit cumbersome. You're going to get haggled a lot. Here again, you're going to be in an unfamiliar environment, and just being able to access your phone directly with an international plan is kind of my recommendation, and it's easiest to do so. However, if you're on a budget, you're looking to go there cheap, of course there is a data plan available locally that you can get from the airport. The next piece on technology that I want to talk about is that all or most of the Western websites that you might be used to going on, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and so on and so forth, a lot of the news websites are going to be blocked in China. And the only way to access them is with a VPN, which is essentially allows you to tunnel out of China and have your IP address changed so that it doesn't seem like you're in China at all, and then you can access those websites. And it might be simple apps like Google Apps. Google Apps is run by Google, which is blocked in China. So if you want to be able to use the Map app on your phone, you're going to need to use a VPN to access the app. And like I said, I recommend Astro, and that you have that set up and purchased before you go into China, or otherwise you're going to have trouble getting a VPN while you're in China, because that's also a blocked service. So you want a VPN, that's the bottom line, and it's just going to help you with convenience and accessing things that you're used to using every single day of your life. Now let's talk about arriving. And I'm going to talk from my experience. So that's from flying from the East Coast of the United States to China, which is about, if you go direct, about a 16-hour flight. The whole trip probably takes about 24 hours, which I know is a long trip. And you're on the plane, sitting for most of the time for 16 hours. You get kind of used to it. I watch about 6-7 movies while I'm on the plane, and that passes time. Or you can do work, prepare what phases you want to go to during the Canton Fair. I wouldn't say that it's that bad. It just depends on how you deal with flights. You're basically going to have a couple options though. You can either fly direct into Guangzhou, which is where the Canton Fair is located, or you can fly into Shenzhen, which is a city close by Guangzhou, but maybe 2 hours away, or you can fly into Hong Kong. Now, if you fly into Hong Kong or Shenzhen, you're essentially going to need to either take a bus or a train from the airport to Guangzhou, which is where the Canton Fair is located. I would recommend that you take a high-speed train. It's the easiest way to do this, and you don't have to deal with a bunch of different immigration and security checks if you were to take a car or a bus from Hong Kong and then go to Guangzhou. You can do that, and it's a cheaper option potentially, especially if you were to take a bus. However, it's just really, here again, troublesome to go through the different checkpoints that you're going to have to do going, exiting Hong Kong and then entering mainland China. And you can kind of just avoid that hassle if you just take a high-speed train direct from Hong Kong if you land in Hong Kong or Shenzhen, and then just go straight to Guangzhou. Next, let's talk about lodging. So you have a couple of options when it comes to lodging and where to stay in relevance to the Canton Fair. There's a couple of hotels, and they're big Western hotels directly around the outskirts of the Canton Fair. However, this is your most expensive option for lodging. They're the closest to the Canton Fair, and they cater towards visitors of the Canton Fair. You have the Shangri-La, which is one of the most beautiful hotels that you could probably stay at, and the most expensive. I believe there's also a West Inn there, and there might be a couple of others. But again, it's going to be your most expensive yet convenient option because it's right next door to the Canton Fair itself. Now, you'll have other hotels throughout the city and Airbnbs. Those are also available to you if you're familiar with Airbnb. My recommendation for lodging is to stay along the subway line. You want to look at where the subway runs into the Canton Fair, because there's 2 subway stops that directly put passengers off into the Canton Fair essentially, and you kind of want to stay along the subway stop. And you can stay up into the main city, which is a little over the river there. There's kind of a river that runs through the city itself, and you can stay a little bit north of that. However, I would recommend that you stay along the subway line. Those tend to be where the bigger roads are located, and if you decide to take the subway to the Canton Fair, it's just going to be most convenient. Not to mention, the subways are extremely easy to use, and they're very cheap. So here again, if you're on a budget, the subway is probably going to be your best option for commuting to and from the fair. Next, let's talk about transportation. So you're going to have 3 main means of transportation. There's going to be a bus option, a subway option, and a taxi option. Most hotels, if they're large enough, will have a bus that'll transport you. Maybe they'll have a time, maybe a time or 2 times in the morning, and then a time or 2 times in the afternoon to and from the fair. So hotels will provide this service to people staying, at the hotel as just a way of, as providing a service back to you as commuting between the fair or not. That time isn't always convenient. So then your next option is going to be the subway. As I already mentioned, it's super cheap, super convenient, and if your hotel is close by, you can use that. And then the third option is a taxi. It's going to be your most expensive option. However, it's the most direct option. At the same time, though, don't think that the taxi is going to be your quickest option. There's going to be a lot of traffic. It's going to be rush hour, and taking a taxi from, your hotel, depending where it is, to the fair could be expensive and just as time consuming as taking the subway. Next on the list is dress. So how should we dress? What kind of apparel should we wear? Clothing. I would say that most of the time you're going to be walking. You're going to do a lot of walking at the Canton Fair. You're going to be doing a lot of walking in general, from the hotel to the subway station, and from the subway station through the whole fair. Again, I'm going to stress this. The fair is massive and you're going to be doing a lot of walking. So you're definitely going to want comfortable walking shoes. I wear business casual when I'm there. I wouldn't go too formal. Then you might seem a little out of place. It's just not really necessary. Just for guys, a button down shirt or a polo shirt. And for women, just, something business casual that you'd wear, to a work environment. So you want to be wearing something comfortable yet professional at the same time. Now let's talk about food. So food at the Canton Fair is unfortunately really bad. They have a lot of kind of fast food Chinese options. That would include breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you're there late enough. And it's not really good at all. Luckily, there is a Starbucks, at the Canton Fair. And I would definitely hit that up early in the morning. They've got coffee and some sandwiches and, your typical breakfast food. So you can get some Western things there, and that kind of helps you get through the remainder of the day. But if you have snacks or anything else that you want to bring along, I would encourage that, because the food options there are just typically not good. And that also goes for the surrounding area of the Canton Fair. So if you're staying in a hotel within the surrounding area of the Canton Fair, there really aren't any restaurant options or good ones there. You got to go into the main city itself to really see any good restaurants. And that's kind of the downside of the Canton Fair complex itself. It's so big and there's just not a lot of high quality restaurants or food options for you while you're there. And then since we're on food, might as well talk about water. So water, just to note, you can't drink water from the faucet. You have to buy bottled water. That goes for everywhere in China, not just at the Canton Fair, but you want to make sure that you're just drinking bottled water the entire time as soon as you get to China. Next, let's talk about communication. So in Hong Kong, they speak Cantonese. And in China or Guangzhou, where the Canton Fair is located, they speak Mandarin. In Hong Kong, if you fly into Hong Kong, you should be pretty much fine speaking English, asking your way around. There's enough people there that are speaking English that'll be able to point you in the right direction. As you go deeper into China, such as Guangzhou, you're going to run into less people that can speak English. You should be fine. It just might be a little bit more hard to find somebody that can help you or give you accurate information. However, at the fair itself, you're definitely going to be surrounded by hundreds, thousands of Westerners. There's going to be tons of people there that can speak English. There's going to be helpers or staff, volunteers, employees that'll have special uniforms on that all speak very good English. Even in fact, they have these helpers basically in the subways and at the airports, flying in. They know that this is an international fair. So the Guangzhou city does a lot to, help the guests that are coming in. So if you're super uncomfortable with the fact, you could go with the translator route. However, you can survive if you're comfortable and you think that you can kind of make it on your own. There are people there that will be able to help you and kind of guide you as they're expecting this influx of guests for the Canton Fair, and they prepare for that. So you could go either way depending on your comfort level of communication. But once you're at the fair and surrounding the area, there's going to be tons of people there that'll speak English and be able to help you out. On top of that, all of the factories will have salespeople there that can speak English. Here they are selling to foreigners. You can be sure that the salespeople they're bringing to the fair are going to be able to speak English and sell their product to you. Next, let's talk about meeting factories. Okay, so there's going to be so many factories at the Canton Fair. You have to remember not to spend too much time with any one factory. You basically want to scan down, walk down the aisle. If you see something that you're interested in, walk in there, quickly ask a couple of questions around minimum order quantity, price, take a picture of the product that you're looking at, take a picture of the business card, take a picture of the booth so that you can go back there if you want to later on at the end of the show. You kind of want to get in and get out because you've got to keep moving. You don't want to spend hours at a booth and then find out later on that there was 3 other booths that had the same or similar products at a better price or better quality. So you want to kind of get in there and get out and move on. It's also important to note that you're going to want to bring a suitcase, a rolling small like carry-on suitcase with you, because all these factories are going to be handing out, magazines or catalogs and business cards. You're going to get a lot of paperwork and you want to be able to put that somewhere. And if you have a backpack, of course you can put it in there, but it's going to get pretty heavy on your back. And I've just found that you'll see a bunch of other people there with roll-on suitcases and they're just like stuffing the bag filled with the different samples that you might collect and the paperwork. Next on the list are gifts. So if this is your first time going to the Canton Fair, your first time visiting with factories in general, and you don't have any pre-existing relationships, you don't need to worry about this. You don't need to bring a gift. But if you do have pre-existing relationships, maybe this is your second time visiting or you've already established a relationship on Alibaba and now you're just going and visiting the factory for the first time, I would encourage you to bring a gift. It does help to build a relationship. The factory, your salesperson would appreciate it a lot. My recommendation is something from your area, something small, maybe less than $25, $50 from your area that represents where you're from and they can give to them. The last time we went, we gave honey. You could also do candles, simple things that are from your area, represent where you're from, and that you can give to them. They'll appreciate it, trust me. Next on the list here is the Haglers. This is one of the more negative things I would say about China. There are a lot of people that are going to try to sell you stuff outside of the airport, outside of the subway stations, outside of the Canton Fair even. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people, whether that's taxi services, tours, people even introducing different products to you. Directly outside of the Canton Fair, there's going to be people soliciting for your email addresses. They're going to be giving you a free gift in exchange for your email addresses. There's lots of people there just trying to either get your information or get your money or sell you something. My general rule of thumb with all of these hagglers is just to completely ignore them. Don't engage with them necessarily, or if you do, really make sure that you have your guard up. I'd be very skeptical about dealing with any of these people or having them sell you something. So just be aware that there's a lot of them. You're going to encounter them all over the city and you're going to be foreign or you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. So they're definitely going to, target you to say. That said, I wouldn't be scared of them in any way. I mean, they're not there to harm you. They're just there to essentially sell you something, as I said, or get your email address or your information. So it's not something to be too concerned about, but just know that you're going to be encountering that. That said, at the Canton Fair, there are people, volunteers, employees that are there helping guests, helping people navigate the city and the fair itself. They're going to be designated, they're going to have a badge, and they're going to be designated in a uniform. Those people might approach you to ask if you have any questions about things, and they are very friendly. A lot of them are students just looking to improve their English ability, and they're just hired there for the week or the couple weeks that the Canton Fair is going on. But you'll be able to recognize them very easily, and they're not in the same areas as the hagglers are. Next on the list is pollution. And I'm sure you guys have all heard about the terrible pollution that's in China. The positive is that it's getting better. It's actually not as bad as people make it out to be. The pictures that you see, the videos that you see online, are extreme cases most of the time, and for the week that you're there, you're going to be fine. Of course, you can wear a mask that's going to give you a little bit more protection, filter out the pollutants, but I wouldn't wear the mask in the fair. That's just my personal preference. I think that's a little bit weird, and you're only there for a week, so it's not going to hurt you too much. But you might encounter some pollution. Luckily, the Canton Fair is in the southern part of China, so there's less pollution down there. If you go up north where it's colder and you're not so close to the ocean or the water, it's not so windy or breezy, you're going to experience more pollution. Down where in Guangzhou area, it's a little bit better than the rest of China. You still might encounter it though, so I did want to make a point about it. And you can bring a mask. After you leave the fair, you can put it on in the subway, you're walking around the city, etc., and you will see other people, wearing masks as well. So it's a completely normal thing to do, and they're not going to judge you for it. But like I said, maybe when you're meeting the factories, don't put it on. Otherwise, feel free to wear the mask any other time. Last but not least, and this is tip number 16 about meetups. So since this video is about, kind of Amazon FBA sellers, there are a couple of meetups at the Canton Fair or at night after the Canton Fair at local restaurants and bars. I would definitely encourage you guys to check out those meetups. I've always gotten a lot of value. It's a great place to network with other top FBA sellers. A lot of the people that are going to the Canton Fair and they're using the Canton Fair to look for, factories or suppliers for their Amazon FBA business, these guys are high-level sellers. So being able to network with other high-level sellers is always a good idea. And there's a couple of meetups that you can attend while you're at the fair, and I'd encourage you guys all to do that. And that brings us to the end, which was point 16. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. These were 16 tips that you absolutely have to know about the Canton Fair to get the most out of it for your Amazon FBA business. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.